am southbound out of Kansas City on 49 heading home towards Texas. I got a stuffy nose right now. This run takes me through Joplin. I think it goes through Dallas and takes me down to Houston area, I think. But I'm booking on this road, and I'm thinking back to when I was about 14 years old. I used to work with this dude at a mall, a little tiny shopping mall. He was the maintenance guy, and I was his helper slash janitor. I emptied trash cans and whatnot. And I was sitting there doing the math in my head. I think Loopy was born in the late 1920s. He was just a teeny bit too young to fight in World War II. And in the 1950s, he was telling me, 50s, early 60s, he used to ride the rails. And a lot of people did that, jump trains. And then, of course, other people say they jump trains, which, yeah, you could say that story. But he had knowledge of the rail system that was kind of weird. He could, sheriff's vehicle, he could tell you, which trains went which way, and based on the cars, if they were stacked a certain height, he could say, well, the rails wouldn't go too far in this direction because the bridges were lower and stuff. So he actually knew what he was talking about when he talked rails. So, like I said, I got a stuffy nose here for 1 second. I got a whole bunch of nobody on here right now, so let me let this brew for a minute. Goodness is ready, sorry. I-49 southbound out of Kansas City heading towards Texas right now. It's early morning, 7-something. I was talking about a guy I used to work with when I was a teenager who was a little bit young for World War II, so his age, he was born, I guess, in the late 1920s. His name was Loopy, and Loopy had more stories on the History Channel. And he used to tell me in the 50s he used to ride the rails across the United States, jump trains, which was real common up till about the 1970s. And anybody could claim they rode the rails, but he actually had information about them. He could tell you what trains went which way, and if they stacked the cars a certain height, they couldn't go to certain locations, and he knew a lot about it. And one day we're working at the mall together, and he started telling me a story about when he was a kid. For some reason, they moved to a little tiny town in Alabama, and in the late 1930s was not, terribly far after the Civil War was fought. And he said this, according to local lore, one of the last battles of the Civil War took part really close to this town. So every year they had like a parade or a memorial for it. And one of the parts of it is this, I think he said the 6th grade class, they would pick 2 or 3 students to read their family history of how they participated in this great battle of the Civil War. And these people were talking about their grandfathers or their great uncles or something like that. And he goes, the common theme was, it was a great victory over the North. They kicked ass and took names, and they would read their family history. For some reason, everybody's grandfather or great uncle was a general or a colonel or was the guy in charge of the most important aspect of this great battle right as the war ended. And he was in, I think, 4th grade the first time he watched this happen. And then the year came where he's now in 5th grade, and one of the kids that was tasked with reading their family history actually was a girl that had moved there from Illinois. And she's got to get up there and they say, what did your family have to do? Because they're kind of on the opposite side, right? And this little girl did some serious research, wrote her little speech, and got up there and said, I don't remember the name of the town, let's call it Vaudeville. And she said, the actual history of the Battle of Vaudeville was, it didn't happen. And there's like this murmur in the crowd, everybody's looking at her, and she says, This was one of the last battles of the war. Both sides, the North and the South, both knew the war was about to end. So their leaders of the two armies kind of met in the middle and said, look, this battle's not going to have any outcome on the war. Why don't we just call it off and just go home and tell your family that you kicked ass and took names? And her family, the northern soldiers, went north, told all their people, oh yeah, we really put the boots to them. The people down south said, yeah, we put the boots to them. But before they broke off the area, somebody got the whiskey barrels out. Everybody got drunk. Somebody shot a cow. They had a barbecue. The North and the South had a big barbecue in the middle. Everybody got drunk and woke up the next day, and they're all looking around at each other. They all worked out a deal. We'll never tell anybody, but just go home and say you really kicked ass. So this little town was having this big parade memorial for the great victory at the Battle of Vaudeville, or whatever the heck it was called. And that girl goes up and says this speech, and the next year he's in 6th grade. It's his class's turn to give the big speech about the war, and they didn't have the parade anymore. Yeah, that whole get together kind of faded away. He goes, they never did it again. I said, that's it, it's over. But I got a kick out of that. This guy was, I don't know, I guess he was in his 60s, early 60s then. But he used to ride the trains, and he knew the rail system in the United States off the top of his head, which rails went which way, and if you were cars going on this track, they were going to go into this sector. And then he would literally tell me, based on the height of how stacked up they were, where it was going and what the content was. And I thought, man, that's kind of cool to have that kind of knowledge and that kind of background. But that just popped into my head this morning, because as I'm cruising along here on the awesome I-49 here in Missouri, I saw a train running parallel to me, and that popped into my head. That got me thinking. But right now, I am essentially deadheading back to Houston. It's like 500 and something miles. I told dispatch I'm still on the board and I'm moving, and I said if anything interesting pops up between here and there, call me and I'll grab it on the way. But generally speaking, I'm heading home. I dropped off my load 3 o'clock in the morning at the receiver back here behind me in Liberty. And I walked, it's poured down rain, and I walked, it was just a box, like handheld box, and I walked in the building, and I said, I got an expedite, and they said, oh, we don't have any forklift guys here until 7. I said, well, here it is, and they went, oh, okay. And the lady signed me off, and I went back out there. I drove to got about charged down back on the road. I'm just ready to be home. My poor van needs a little bit of maintenance. Miles yesterday on it, and it's making a rattling noise at slow speed when I hit bumps, so there's a possibility the tie rods are loose. I don't think it is, but the struts in the front are pretty much shot. It's just age. It's not that they've been beaten on or anything, but they do wear out. I got to do the differential fluid, and I got to change. I'm going to do a drain and fill and transmission. And I gotta flush the brake lines out. Apparently you gotta do that. I didn't know about that, about the fluid. And like I said, I got 150 on this van, and I met a woman at our company HQ driving the exact same van, different color, but the exact same van, and she had 665,000 miles on hers. And I went, boom! And the only thing she's ever, like non-routine maintenance she's ever had to do to it was replace the timing chain. And the reason you could put high miles on these vans is simply because look what we're doing. We're in 10th gear cruising down the highway. I'm not using the brakes. I'm not using the transmission, so to speak. And starting a cold engine wears it out. Running an engine warm all the time is actually not bad for it. Let's just say, what are you driving? What am I driving? I have a used 2020 Ford Transit 250. It's the medium roof, long wheelbase. Last time I was out here expediting a few years ago, I had the really, really tall transit extended. I mean, it was okay to drive, but it got atrocious. 16, 17 miles per gallon. Excuse me one second. I got nasal problems going on. And having that extra space was wonderful and lots of fun, but I think I used it twice. I put 180,000 miles on the van and I used all that extra space twice, and that's a lot of money to buy that extra space and a lot of gas you burn pushing around. They have what, major water pump? Really? I've never heard of that. That van at 180,000 miles didn't give me an issue. Didn't give me any issues at all. And I got 100. I bought this one with 109. I now have 150. And other than the suspension starting to wobble, the front struts, I haven't had any issues with this. And there's basically three vans. One of three vans you could buy. There used to be a Nissan, but nobody owned those. You got the Transit Fords. You got the Dodge ProMaster, and you got the Mercedes. The only mechanical issue with the ProMaster I'm familiar with is if you start the motor and it sounds like somebody's playing a typewriter under the hood. The lifters, there was a whole line of them where the lifters were bad. You have to replace the springs and the lifters themselves. And there's the seating position in the Dodge. Before you buy one of those, go get in it, because the seating position is weird. It's more like a bus. The steering column is steeper down by your legs, and I'm tall, and my height is in my upper body, and when I'm sitting in there, I almost can't reach the steering wheel. It's so far away. It just had a weird seating position. The only bad thing I've ever heard about the Mercedes was a guy I was talking to him like 3 days ago. He bought a used one, outfitted it, threw his tools in it, went to Wally World to buy some, came out, his van was on fire in the parking lot. Some kind of electrical thing under the dash burned itself down. And if you drive a Mercedes and you have to do maintenance on it, which you do, just remember, because that part has M stamped on it, it's going to cost 3 or 4 times as much. Maybe the Mercedes has water, I don't know. That's the only guy I've ever talked to with the Mercedes. But he said he said he found the video. Somebody shot a video of it online on fire in the parking lot. So if you look on YouTube, you might find that video. But he said it was just engulfed in flames, and he just standing there holding his bags going, Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I don't think a Mercedes is any more or less reliable of a van. I just think it costs god-awfully more to own and operate. And I have talked about this before on another video, but there was a kid, when I say kid, he was in his early 20s. He decided he wanted to get into expediting. Normally you don't see young people doing this, but he decided there was some kind of romance to this job. There isn't, but he thought there was something romantic about this job. He took out a loan and bought a brand new Mercedes. You know that big one? The big one it'll hold like 4 pallets? He bought it new. He outfitted it, bunk, refrigerator, TV, microwave, insulated heater, air conditioner. He started driving out here. He started making videos with, all his vast experience. And he lasted 3 weeks. And he said, I don't like doing this. He had the van for sale. Good luck with that, dude. Own a vehicle a month to try to sell it used. Yeah, good luck. Yeah, you're basically, there's 2 ways you get into this job. You go in heavy or go in light. If you go in heavy, you go out and buy a new van, a big one. You go in light, you buy what I buy, which is a used medium-sized van. And there's still plenty of cargo out there to move around in this van. Whew, I don't know what's going on with my nose. Wow. Broke down on the other side of the road as an AMC Pacer. Good God almighty, I haven't seen one of those in 25 years. Anyway, I drove last night across Missouri on 36, and it was really nice. It started pouring down rain massively to the point that I couldn't use cruise control anymore. But it rained almost all the way across Missouri. but I still enjoyed it. So now I'm going. I need some suggestions. My wife's birthday is on the 1st of August, and I didn't think I was going to be home during this time, and I need some advice of what I should do for her birthday. Mr. Indian, hey, how you doing? Oh, I just took some some runny nose medication. I hope it kicks in. My nose is all plugged up. And runny and plugged up at the same time. Wow. It's like I stuck my face into a bag of pollen. Old age kicking my butt. Yeah, I based on current gas prices and the gas mileage I get, for fuel purposes, this van costs me, I think, 11 or 12 cents a mile to drive. And this is a long deadhead home, but I got to get there and I got to get it worked on, so I don't have much of a choice. I just hope dispatch can make me poop something on the way down here, but this is not this part of the country is not exactly up for cargo. I just had a conversation in the parking lot. Sorry. When I was trying to pull out, it was a guy who owned 3 trucks, owned a trucking company, and a couple of days ago, he sold his trucks and said, I can't do this anymore. And he was asking me about expediting, and he said in the trucking industry, what happened the last few years is all these people come from outside the United States, show up, and the U.S. government gives them a big grant for some reason. And they would either buy a hotel or buy a trucking company. And he said they don't understand the bidding process of how to pay for loads, so they just throw a load on the board at a low rate, and they go, yeah, that's good. And what you're doing is you're teaching the shippers that they can get their loads super cheap freight, because the guys don't know that you don't take that first bid. And it ran all the prices of freight down to the point that he couldn't get loaded unless he wanted to do it for free, basically. He said it got ridiculous. And he said he was in Washington State, couldn't get a load, drove from Seattle, drove to Salt Lake City, couldn't get a load, went to Denver, couldn't get a load, and drove the rest of the way home, which is somewhere out here. And then he sold his trucks and said, I'm not doing this anymore. Sorry again. And he was asking me about this job. And this job's, again, expediting is pretty easy to get into because you're not looking for a truckload, you're looking for a pallet load. A pallet or 2 at the most. It's slightly different. I made a video, a week ago. It's called Wannabes. And it's about people that fake their background and fake their credentials and fake their accomplishments. And I put that video out. I'm still thinking about this guy. And the next day I bumped into a driver at our headquarters, some guy that, if you look at him, you would think he was homeless. He's real heavy, and most of his teeth are missing, and he doesn't have any military bearing about him. And this guy was sitting there running his mouth about driving on a military base, and oh my God, don't you recognize who that is in that van? That's, and I quote, Major Colonel, Bob Smith or whatever. I'm like, oh, Major Colonel, that's that new rank the Army has. Starts telling all these war stories, and I'm going, dude, shut up. A non-military person is not going to convince a military person they were in. A non-teacher is not going to convince a teacher that they do that. Just like a person who can't play a musical instrument is not going to convince somebody who does that they can play one. You can't just fake all that stuff. Let's see, I'm getting 22.5 miles per gallon right now out of this thing, which is, for a van, is phenomenal. Going 62. I got a handful of people on here. Where's everybody from, out of curiosity? I've had Berlin, Norway, New Zealand, Australia, India. I've had all kinds of different places. Where are people from here? And this is I-49 southbound in Missouri. I'm 65 miles out of Joplin, and I'm turning, I think, on 44 to 35 or something like that. So we're out in the country here. I don't get hay fever. Why is my nose running all over my face? And I still need some advice what I should do for my wife's birthday. What's everybody doing up this early? Boston, ha! Oh, you're in Boston. Boston. Yeah, I'm expediting, and this is a Ford Transit 250 medium roof long wheelbase, I should say. From here, you go up to the extended roof, where I can walk around it. I'm 6'4", and I can walk around inside of it. And then they make the extended tall one, and that was my other van that I used to have back in the day. And they're wonderful for space, and you do have the ability to carry larger payloads. But my last van that I had, I put 180,000 miles on it, and I do believe I carried cargo that filled up all that space twice. And you're paying an extra 20 grand for that little bit of space. And I think I was getting probably average 16, 17 miles per gallon in that thing. And like I said, right now I'm at 22.6 and going up. So you're losing a quarter of your gas mileage and paying an extra $20,000. So to me, it just wasn't worth it. So this time around, I went down to this size van, and I haven't had any problem keeping loads in here. About 95% of what I carry is a single pallet. Occasionally I carry two, and if the pallets aren't terribly tall, I leave my bunk down because I built my bunk up really high. And if I need to, I can fold it up in the back and carry a second pallet. And I did that once on a long haul, and it was two big square pallets, and I folded my bunk up, and then I took my mattress and threw it on top of the pallets and slept on them. Yeah, they were heavy duty enough. Oh, Boston. We had a guy I used to work with. He was from Boston. His name was Pepper, and we called him Pep. And we say, "Hey Pep, say carp." He'd say cop. Say cop, cops. They'd say, "Yeah, there's a cop and a cop." And he would argue with us about it. Pack the car, the car pack. Yeah, good old Pep. Oh, the good old days. Oof. It's 81 degrees, but it doesn't feel that warm outside. It seems like the humidity is down on this end. And it was the last few days. Yes, that's how we talk. See, I told you. Yeah, a cop and a carp, which is a cap and a cap. Yeah, whatever happened to you? Man, don't get me wrong, I used to work out in the Gulf, and the people out there in the Gulf of Mexico, they don't talk a certain way too. If you want to come up and have a serious conversation, they start talking at you like that, and you can't help but start laughing at them. I worked with a lot of them too. Ironically, Germany is like that. If you ever learn how to speak German, the textbook German is from Northern German. Because if you try to use that in Southern Germany, they won't understand you because it's like a whole different slingy accent down there. But yeah, you think people like that only do that on television? No, they're actually talking like that. I used to fly out in the Gulf, and I would beach in, and I would talk in they call them, in Louisiana, they call them a Cajun, but everybody down there calls them a Kunas. I would come in and speak in a Kunas accent. And the next time I would beach in, I would use a French accent, and then I would use a German accent. I would just switch around my voice just to make it sound different. something to do. But yeah, that was something to do. I was watching something years ago on TV, and they were interviewing this girl. This is 25 years ago. She was in her late 20s, beautiful. She was from New Zealand, and she was answering a question, and her accent was so thick, you could cut it with a knife coming out of her mouth. And I said to the TV, "I'm in love with you." It sounded sexy. Couldn't understand it, but it sounded sexy. So southbound, the sun's starting to creep up a little bit over here on the left side. Last night, Friday night, there were cops out here all over the freaking place. They were everywhere. And I run radar. I don't need it, but I run it with my man. And they were picking away. And I whipped into a gas station last night at about 2 in the morning. And I pull up to the gas pump, and Highway Patrol pulls in and pulls in back kind of behind me. He's watching me, and I sat in the van to get out of the van. Then he drives and moves and parks on the other side of the station at a pump where he's actually watching me, and I think he's waiting for me to get out. And I just sat there. I'm like, I sat there until he drove off. I didn't want to get out. I didn't want to be subject to whatever interrogation tactics he had planned. I wasn't about that. Oop, there we go. So, we got some sunlight coming up. At least the traffic's down. See the color contrast with that field on the right? Look at that gold color. That's why I like the light at this time of the day when it comes up. It makes everything more. This is part of the golden hour, they say. 1 hour after sunrise and 1 hour before sunset for photography purposes. That's why I like running this. Whew. God is my witness, when I get home this time, we're going to figure out how I can run this dash cam like this and run music even with it, because I cannot figure it out on my phone. There's my first dead armadillo. That one got pretty far up here. Look on our left side, this guy's in a hurry. This guy decided to play chase. Yeah, up in Michigan and Illinois, the gas is $3+ a gallon, like $3.29, $3.39. That is really high. And last night over here in Missouri, I was getting pretty low, and I was able to fill up at 259, I think it was. Down into Texas, it's below 250. When you're out here playing this nickel and dime money game, that's hard to do when you're paying that kind of money for fuel. See that straight up there. So I'm running on 2 hours of sleep right now, and I kind of woke up. My brain was, you know how that is, your brain starts spinning. And I looked out, and I got my blinders up, and there's little gaps, and I looked outside, and I saw that it was light already. I said, okay, I guess I'm up. So here we go. Let's see if I can blast. This thing shows, and this number will move. It'll get further and further away, but it shows me getting home at 5:30 today, this afternoon, and it's, 7:40 right now, so that's quite a ways, but I want to get home. I've been out here like 3 weeks. And I'm starting to notice after 3 weeks I get pissy. I get tired. When I was flying for a living, the work schedule usually goes 7 on, 7 off, 14 on, 14 off. And we had a time when we had a pilot shortage, and I decided to be the hero and stay on the clock question is, how many days can you fly as a commercial pilot in a helicopter and still be effective? And I found the answer, which is 38. And we had this one base in Louisiana, in Cameron, Louisiana. Coming up this channel, we had a helipad right by the water, right by a boat dock. And there was myself and a couple other aircraft would land there occasionally. And you land, you always shoot your approach and your takeoff to the middle of the pad, and then you slide out of the way. And I came in there and landed looking at the sun, because that's where the wind was, and I landed early in the morning. I got right in the middle of the pad, and I almost slid over to get out of the way. And I said, you know what, I'm only going to be here for a minute. I shut the aircraft down, and I got out, and I walked around, and there was a helicopter parked, tied down, right where I was going to slide over, and I would have slammed right into that, and that would have been a lot of paperwork. And I stopped, and I stared at it. And I had gotten, my brain was so out of kilter without having a chance to reset. I called the boss and I told him what I just did. I was a breath away from just sliding over. He said, yeah, you hit your limit. And I got back in and fired up and flew the quick hop back up to our base and parked the aircraft, went home. Just, I don't care what you do for a living, there is a point, a time and point you need to break free from it and let your brain reset. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're selling houses, washing dishes. I don't care what it is. You have to let your brain reprogram. So I found how far I can go. And this job is a little different. It's not as stressful or dangerous, but it does get frustrating at times. Yesterday was frustrating. I had to pick up a package in a Ford plant, and it's one little box, and they give me the paperwork, and the address to the pickup was the front gate of a plant that's like 8 square miles, and then underneath it was a series of codes. It was like MSA 5G-10377, and I went to the gate and I said, what is that? And he goes, oh, that's the so-and-so, and I went to the so-and-so, and they didn't know what I was talking about. I got sent back outside the plant to a non-existent address, had to call and get a pin drop to another address, and they wanted to send me back to the first place I was at. And they go, oh, wait a minute, that's a whole different department in a whole different part of the plant. So I spent 2 hours, count them, 1, 2, 2 hours driving around burning gas, trying to find out where I was supposed to pick up this package. And I finally got it, and I got on the road. I was on 94 West in Michigan, and the road, I've been on that road a dozen times, and it's usually just wide open. It's like this. Look out, this is what it usually looks like, what you're seeing right now. There were cars everywhere. It was kind of weird. And they hit road construction, where they pitch the road off and lose one of 3 lanes, and it was like pandemonium. Everybody would stop and look around, like, oh my God, this is so confusing. I'm like, really? So there were huge delays for minor construction. Then you get rolling again, and it did it again. And again, pandemonium. What the, come on. And then there was a car broke down on the side of the road, and they blocked one of the lanes because there's a car broke down. I'm like, why? And that dragged me into Chicago area rush hour, and then we got out the other side of rush hour, and it continued, and there were a lot of radio traffic in the trucks going around going, what's going on? And people said, there's nothing up here. Look, I said, I do this 5 days a week. It's never been like this before. So just huge delays that got me in super late last night. It was just frustrating. But that's, you can't control that stuff, but it's frustrating. But I like driving at night, and I like driving when it's like this, and there's nobody around, and the sun's low. I just got to stay awake enough to get home. I'll hang out with the wife for about a week, and then I'll pack up and come back out, and then I meet her in New York later in August, and I'll film that. I'll show you what's going on there. The family farm, it's been in the family for generations. My cousin is the current executor of the land. It's a really, really relaxing place to hang out. And he's got a Ford Mustang convertible he's going to let me drive, but he also has a slingshot. If that's running, I want to drive that. Those are fun. I've only driven it one time, and it was fun. We'll see what happens. Oh, and the family farm is directly across the street for some train tracks, so that's kind of cool. And people who live by the train tracks don't care. People who don't do, they think it's fun. They think it's enjoyable. It's something different. So I want to go play with the camera. I have a little teeny tiny camera mount, it's like 10 inches tall. I'm going to find a way of mounting that. If I can, I'm going to mount it under the train and see if I can get it filmed from underneath. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm going to try. I'm going to see if I can get some fun video. I'm easy to entertain, in case you hadn't figured that out. Ooh. This guy in front of us, he's coming right at us. Saw a tow truck once towing another tow truck, and I was like, wow, so literal. Louisiana, they do sugar cane, and when it's cane season, the cane gets really, really tall, and a nasty storm will blow over, and it'll just crush it. It all falls down, and you're flying over, you look down, it's all broken down. You're like, man, that's destroyed. He goes, no, come back later this afternoon. I don't know how tall sugar cane gets, 8-10 feet? You fly back that afternoon, and it's all standing back upright. This stuff is resilient. But when it comes time to harvest the sugar cane, they have these big trucks with these basically kind of a mesh basket on the back, and they cut it down and throw it in these trucks, and they run it all day, all night. The problem is these trucks don't have taillights on them. So you're going to work at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, trying to get to your air base. You come up behind one of these trucks going 25 miles an hour in front of you, and you're doing 70. It'll wake you out of a dead sleep, I'll tell you that. And all of a sudden, a mass appears in front of you strolling along. And that's dangerous, but it happened more than once. It snuck up on you. That guy up there reminded me of that. I grew up in, so that sign back there, I grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado. It's a fairly nice, fairly large town in the northern part of the state, real close to the Wyoming border. And back in the 70s, the 60s or 70s, somebody brought in some Canadian geese and raised them and let them go. And then they started populating. So they have Canadian geese that live there that don't migrate because they don't know to migrate. So they just hang out. And you can't shoot them and you can't do anything about it. So you go to a park, they sit in little piles, you walk up to them and they're not moving. They just look at you. Go around, dude. Go around. And there's this one company, I don't even know if it exists anymore, in town called Woodward Governor. They make governor controls for engines or something. And they have these big, manicured, beautiful landscape on their property. And then there's a main road, a big, heavy-duty trafficked road. And on the other side of that is a pond, a big lake, a fairly large pond, maybe a small lake. And the geese hang out on the lawn at Woodward Governor, and then they fly over the highway, over the road, and land in the water, and they go back and forth. Well, in the springtime, when the little ones are born, the little ones can't fly. So in the middle of rush hour with a wall of cars going in both directions, a goose will kind of fluff its wings up and walk out into the middle of the highway and stop traffic. So mom and the kids can walk across the street, and then the Papa Goose will slowly back up and look around and kind of hold his wings up, kind of going, "Yeah, I would have whooped all y'all. We would have tried something." And I don't care how bad of a day you're having when you have to stop your car for a goose with its kids following you. It'll make you laugh. You look around, everybody's smiling. You got 6 lanes of traffic stopped because they want to cross the street in the middle of the intersection. It's just something you do when you live there. Something you put up with. Ooh. I still need some suggestions for my wife's birthday. I am considering taking her bowling. We haven't done that in a long time. I remember she was good at it last time we did it. What are we doing on? Up 22.4. It's creeping down my mileage. That sucks. Go on my playlist, you'll see my wife's on a lot of those. I use her as a prop, and when I'm about to start videoing something stupid, I don't warn her what I'm going to do. I just say filming, and I start talking to the phone, and I drag her into my stupidity. So when any kind of reaction you hear out of her is legitimate, because I blindside her with stuff. And as a matter of fact, I have a small inventory of things I've been saving until I get home so I can throw it at her. Because that's the joys of, that was my morning Celius. The joys of marriage. I think she misses me making her coffee, because I make it better than she does. Yeah, why can't all the driving be like this? Wide open freaking road. Miles north of Joplin, southbound on I-49. And based on the condition of this road, I'm going to say this is relatively new. Shot a video a couple weeks ago, it reminds me, it's somewhere in my playlist. And it's called, also, I think it's something like Awesome Roadside Experience or Wonderful Roadside Experience. Up in Wisconsin, they have roadside fruit stands. They sell vegetables and stuff. And down in Texas, I don't think I've ever seen one. And I was motoring, and the conditions were like this. It was early morning, the sun was coming up, and I glanced out the left side, and there was an Amish family reloading their roadside vegetable stand. And I slammed on the brakes, spun back around, and went over there. And there was a woman with 2 little kids, and they have they're Amish, they have the way they dress and everything. And I told her, this is absolutely wonderful. This is what you have. I said, is it okay if I film this? And she says, yes, as long as you don't put the kids in. And I said, all right, that's, their culture, they don't like that, I guess. So I let them walk off, and I started to film it, and I shot them from behind, but they were 50 yards away, walking away. But I filmed that, and I bought 2 tomatoes that actually taste like, wait for it, tomatoes, and they were the size of landmines. They were really big. I eat a tomato like an apple. I like them. I bought a container of a herb and salt mix as a flavoring agent. I don't know anything about it. I bought it because it looks interesting. And I bought a glass jar of pure maple syrup. Again, not from a farm, not from a factory, but somebody went out and actually tapped the tree for it. And the glass bottle has the name of their farm, but there's no barcode on it or anything. It's legitimately theirs. But they had a cash box there to put your money in, and on top of the cash box, they had a change box you could open up, and it had money in it. And I went, huh. I don't think anybody messes with them, to be honest with you. I think people respect what they do and respect those people up there, and I would imagine the community protects them. The Amish community, they're riding the buggies and everything up there. But I thought that little roadside stand, and there's my video in there. I think it's called Wonderful Roadside Experience, and it might be under my I call the scenic route, which I'm just doing something fun to do, something fun to look at. But I got a kick out of that, and I hope in the future I would have bought more stuff from them, but I don't have the ability to carry it. I can't refrigerate or anything. I can't carry it around. But I probably would have bought more off. And they had one container that said homemade butter. I'm like, wow. Again, can't carry it. I don't have the ability. Because I would have. I ended up spending $15 there that day. Oh, chopping 48. One good thing that happened yesterday. Right after I hit 150,000 miles, my check engine light popped on. Every time you start a vehicle, shut it off, turn it back on, it runs like a systems check. And if a fault pops up, it'll light up. But every time you restart the vehicle, it'll run a systems check. And whatever caused that light to come on cleared. And I don't have the little computer, to plug in and tell you what it was. It could have been a glitch. It could have been something nasty went through the fuel and it touched one of the sensors, the ejectors, and it didn't like it. I mean, there's no telling what it was, but it did clear itself, so that's a good thing. So right now, all I'm thinking about when I get home is the front struts. Got to get them to stop making this weird noise and just replace them. They're bolt-on, which is nice, because old school, you had to have a tool to squeeze your spring to put new shocks in and paint the butt. This is just a bolt-in kit. I apologize, my nose is still running all over my face. And the sun continues to come up. I can notice it's gradually getting brighter out here. If you live out east, you drive out west, as you get to higher and higher elevations, you'll notice your gas mileage will start creeping up on you a little bit. Under certain circumstances, you'll have a little bit less power, but you'll have a better gas mileage. Mainly because it's like what airplanes do. The higher up you go, the less air you have, and your engine's running a combination of air and fuel. It's a little teeny bit of fuel and a whole bunch of air. So if you only have a little bit of air, you only have a little bit of fuel. It's just that the computer, used to be carbureted, it didn't do it, but your fuel injection adjusts to that. It just gives it a little less fuel because there's less air for it to combust with. As you start climbing in altitudes, you'll start noticing your gas mileage creep up. And I'm noticing there's no altitude here to speak of, but compared to sea level, you start noticing these little teeny tiny slivers of changes in the performance and the mileage. There's a sign back there for an antique store called Vintage Chaos. That's a good name. Seems to be stuffing up now, finally. Yeah, if you're driving a van, you're going to be spending a lot of money on oil changes. And you're doing 10,000 mile changes. That's once a month, maybe every 5 weeks. And you want to run synthetic, these things. I mean, everybody runs synthetic, but you take it into Joe Bob Oil Change, they're going to charge you anywhere from $90 to $120 to do your oil. So that's $100 a month you're losing on oil changes. And I'm a castor oil fan. I've been one since the 80s. And I run, it calls for 520 I run full synthetic castor oil 520, and I found it in a store. It cost something like $36 or something for the 5-quart container. And I went on Amazon and found it for, it varies. It goes from $21 to $23, which includes shipping. And I'm like, hello? And I run the Upside app, and I run Fetch. And on the Upside app, I stock up money, and I get a $20, once I'm up $20, I cash it out, and I send it to my Amazon, well, my wife's Amazon account. And then I turn around and buy the oil. So I have a constant shipment of oil coming to the house. I used the one I had in here a week and a half ago. I put it in. Had to change the oil. And I use Motorcraft. Motorcraft is Ford. I use their filters. Hit the rumble strip. Rumble strip. Okay, hold on. There's one of these in Louisiana. It looks like raindrops. It's like an inside layer. And it's quieter before you hit the rumble ones. Right there. What price entertainment. I keep a constant flow of oil coming to the house. And everybody's got their favorite oil filter. I use Wix as my favorite, but I find Motorcraft are a little more plentiful and a little less money. The only oil filter you want to avoid like the plague is Fram. And they've done tests on oil filters, and this one's a little better than that one. Fram has paper in it. It's garbage. Oh, this is the heavy garbage. It's garbage. Use anything but Fram. Wix, W-I-X, can't go wrong with theirs. Bosch is okay, but it's overpriced. I literally buy a 2-set of Motorcraft. They come in a 2-pack, and I think I paid, what did I pay for that? $17 or something for 2 of them. They're in the Transit. The battery is under the driver's seat, and under the passenger seat is a hollow cavity. And I throw my my little tool bag in there, and my spare parts, and my filters, and all my junk is in it. So. But when I get home this time, I'm going to throw my latest 5-quart jug of oil in here, so I'll be ready for my next oil change. All you got to do is find a curb to get the right front tire up off the ground. Change your oil, pour it in the pan, put the plug on, put the filter on, pour your oil in, drag the pan off from under the van, and use your funnel and pour that oil back into the jug. And then take it to any auto parts store, and they'll accept it to return the oil. It's fairly simple. And it costs, with the filter, a breath over $30 to do. And it only takes a few minutes. And there's someplace on the East Coast they have rumble strips on a section of road, and if you hit it at a very precise speed, it plays a song. If you run over it, some kind of musical, some kind of song, but you got to be going like exactly 57 miles an hour. Whew. Probably a little bit of water jug here in a minute. So right now, my only mission is to stay awake. So far, so good. Everybody thinks coffee and energy drinks are what keep you up. What actually keeps you up is water. Because as you start to dehydrate, your little synapses in your brain stop banging. You gotta keep drinking water. This is a boring section of road, but I like it because it's wide open. Everybody's flashing past me right now. He doesn't have a license plate. Anybody got a question, a comment, or a topic to start throwing rocks at? Remember Monty Python? That went on from like 69 to 75, is a little before my time. And they had a skit in there where you would go into a place and you could pay money to get talked to or talked at. This guy goes in and pays his money, and he goes, oh, okay, go down to door number 4. He paid for an argument. And he opened the door, and somebody goes, you stupid, worthless, overpaid, underworked. And he goes, I'm here for an argument. He goes, oh, no, this is abuse. That's 2 doors down. So the guy's, okay, and he goes in. The guy says, yeah, I'm here for an argument, and he has to pay him a certain amount of money. And they sit there and start arguing about nothing. And then all of a sudden the guy stops talking. He goes, what's wrong? He goes, oh, you have to pay me more to continue this argument. He goes, what do you mean? I just paid you. And the guy just kind of starts humming, looking around. He goes, seriously, I keep arguing with me. And he goes, I'm sorry, sir, you have to pay for more time. So then he hands him another, 10-pound note or whatever. And he goes, there. He goes, there, what? He goes, I just paid you. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yeah, I did right now. No, you did not. I just handed you the money. You didn't. So now they're back arguing. Wow. Come on, Texas. Of course, once you get to Texas, still got a ways to go. You could cross the border in eastern Texas. You come across at Orange, and you drive to the other side of Texas. You get out at El Paso. It is a breadth under 1,000 miles between those two places. That's a long drive. Looks looks fun. Oh yeah, this is a party. Woo-hoo, woo-hoo. Yeah, anyway. That's nice because it's wide open. I like that. I don't like being around lots of traffic. And my head's still spinning from 3 days ago? I'm on I-80 in Ohio, and you have 3 lanes to play with, and the speed limit's 70, I believe. I'm over in the right lane going my 62. I have a big truck in the middle lane passing me, and I have another truck come whipping up in the right lane, and he's back there flashing his headlight and blowing his horn at me, like I'm supposed to jump out of his way and go where, dude? I'm in the right lane. You realize that, right? This is the right lane where you do this. And he's back there throwing a fit at me. Still haven't figured that one out. There's a Wally World on the right and Phillips 66 towing 269. And Wally World's 269. That's literally 60 or 70 cents a gallon less than it was in Michigan or in Illinois. That might not seem like a lot to a person who puts in a little bit of gas in their car, but when you're out here driving hundreds of miles a day at minimum, yeah, that's a lot of money. Well, I'm driving into a headwind right now. That's what's going on. If you see a body of water, it can be a lake or it can be a puddle the size of a saucer. It doesn't really matter. If you want to know where the wind is coming from, look at the water. Don't look for the waves and the white caps. Just look at the water. Whatever side of the lake where the water is shiny or smooth, that's where the wind is coming from, because the wind has to go over whatever's blocking it, the gland or the bushes or the weeds or something, and then it has to dip down to wrinkle the water. Now it might be, the stronger the wind, the bigger the bald spot. Sometimes the water, the bald spot's very small, but it'll be there if there's any wind. And it can, like I said, it can be a pond 300 yards in diameter, and it can be the size of a $50. It can be that small. It'll still have the same effect proportionate to its size. And I just glanced over there and I saw a pond, and it had a pretty steep area of smoothness, which tells me I am driving into a headwind right now. Which is why I'm only getting 21.9. So my mileage is actually creeping down a little bit in this wind. You can't look out the window and see it, but it's there. That pond gave it away. Everything that flies takes off and lands into the wind. And I was offshore, and I was shooting an approach to a platform. There were seagulls all over the platform, and they'll move out of your way as you come on short final. I've had a couple of them stand there, and they're going to be tough. And they just stand there and look at you until the rotor wash hits them, and then they get blown off the side. But I had one seagull that took off in front of me. It kind of went up in the air. It was pretty breezy that day, and he was hovering in the wind, and I landed. I'm looking up at him through the rotor disc, turning at flight idle, and he decided to come back and land. The problem is he tried to land through the rotor system. Yeah, that didn't turn out. Whoa, that didn't turn out so well for him. Not at all. My normal routine out here is to listen to audiobooks, and I bought a satellite radio subscription back in 2005. I got a lifetime subscription for, I think it was $325. That was 20 years ago. And I put it's in my wife's car. We've had her car for 11 years. And here a couple of years back, they offered, SiriusXM offered the app for your phone, so I added it to my phone. And I Bluetooth it to the van, and now I have two subscriptions for $325 20 years ago, which is kind of a good deal. So I listen to stuff on there, and I listen to audiobooks, downloadable audiobooks, Audible. And that's kind of my routine going down the road. But now I've branched off into this streaming stuff because I guess people are seeing parts of the country they don't get to see, or they don't live in this country and they don't know what it looks like in different areas. That's why I always tell people where I'm at. I'll bring it up multiple times because the terrain is different. There's some really beautiful areas to drive through, and I'm going to start filming those as I get into them. I wish I was streaming a couple of years ago because I've seen some pretty neat stuff out here on the roads. Alright, we've been at this a little over an hour. The sun's getting ready to, it's coming up high enough, it's kind of taking away the effect. So I'm going to bail, but I will catch up with you guys here later. If I'm still out here on the road later today and things look interesting, I'll bring it up. Take care.